to the past to make it, to turn it into history. The most famous example is the Marxist class exploitation theory. It was later applied in Soviet Union as a formation theory. Or in Western example is the school of Annales, the French school of Annales. So who were investigating with certain concepts, for example, secularization. And then they used serial sources, testaments, yeah, of the people, and then you can trace back really how less important the church was and so on. So with a new concept, a new question, they opened up the importance of new types of sources or evidence. Yeah? This is something what we already see in his history of the Georgian Nation, so archaeology, linguistics. This is something was very debated among scholars in Petersburg, for example. So in Soviet, my yesterday's argument was really that in Georgia, historiography went on also with this constructionist approach, formation theory, but after the end of the Soviet Union, it fell back on Ivane Javakhishvili, on the constructionist. Still, you have to fight here in Georgia really to come to that is all a kind of construction or interpretation that can be also interpreted in another way. And this is something that is very much depends on social interaction, on interest of certain groups, integration. And this is what I tried really to demonstrate for the early 20th century in the environment of Ivane Javakhishvili's publication, and how you can really link social and political events to what is written. And that is not something that you can separate from each other, but you have to relate it to each other. And this is what I'm attempting to demonstrate to Georgian historiography. And then hopefully we can also continue to reread a lot of other very interesting books. There's a very interesting social history of Georgia that was published in the 1920s. Nobody is using this book now. But it's a very interesting approach to look from a class-based way. Yeah? And this needs to be reread and reinterpreted, and it's really, you can really then find also new materials that they are relying on, or they tried to find these kind of new materials, and so on. Yeah? So therefore, in that time, I would say he succeeded because he created something that is nowadays also perceived as, and it became turned into the Georgian national master narrative that is beyond any doubt, not criticized. And yeah, so to contextualize and to historicize this is what I'm doing totally. But I'm totally on your side, so I'm also in this kind of deconstructionist approach and really putting it into the context. And that is what I'm missing most of all in Georgian historiography. It's without any context. Yeah, so as if the Georgian nation was existing for itself over centuries, there was no interaction with other cultures, with other people, with other groups, and so on. Only foreign invaders. Yeah. But I think this is an insufficient perception of the past, and we need to broaden the horizon for the past of what was going on here.
First of all, thank you for having interesting presentation, and your input is really amazing, bringing new actually outlook to what has been happening for decades, and maybe centuries. And I wonder how much evidence is available. I mean, if we try to go back to, let's say, medieval centuries, and how much is possible to deconstruct, and to what extent, for instance, to the best of your knowledge, the French annals school methodology was used by Georgian historians. I mean, of course not traditional historians, but maybe more modern historians. And is it possible to apply this methodology to the analysis of Georgian historiography in terms of constructing it?
Rád აღსინდა კონკრეტულად საფრანგეთის ან დროის იმ სივრცეს და გადმოვიდა მომავალ საუკუნეებში გარკვეულწილად დაასახა გეგმები და ის მიმართულება, რომელიც უნდა განებო ევროპულ ცივილიზაციას. აი რაც დაიწყო ამ 50 წლის წინათ, ალბათ ისიც გამიზნული იყო მომავალი თაობებისათვის, იმიტომ რომ მაშინ ჯერ კიდევ 60-იან წლებში გასული საუკუნეებისა ვერავის არ მივიდნენ, რომ 30 წელიწადში გამოჩნდებოდა პერსონალური კომპიუტერი, რომელიც ყველას მისცემდა საშუალებას შესულიყო ინტერნეტში და მთელი მსოფლიო მოეცვა. ასევე მაშინ ჩვენ სხვა გამოწვევებს უპირისპირდებოდით. ქართული ენა იყო ზეწოლის ქვეშ რუსეთის მხრიდან. დღეს ჩვენ გამიზნით ასეთივე ზეწოლას ინგლისურის მხრიდან და ამისათვის სწორედ თარგმნელებმა, თარჯიმნებმა, ლიტერატორებმა, ენის სპეციალისტებმა უნდა გაუწიოთ ამას, სწორედ აი ესეთი ნაბიჯებით, რომელიც თინამ და მისმა გუნდმა განახორციელეს.
The title a PhD. This was very important to get it accepted by censors, yeah, Glavlit or Tavlit and so on. So this kind of practices, how to package your research that it got through, how to quote Marx in the beginning and in the end, and in between you're doing what you want. But this practice of history writing during Soviet period in Georgia has not been investigated yet. But they need then, as long as those people are still alive, you need to interview them, really what happened and how certain books were printed or not printed. We don't know what kind of historical works have been forgotten. I mentioned this one from the social history from the 1920s. Yeah, but there might be others that have been put somewhere and are not used at all because they did not fit into a general paradigm. Also the question, why did Georgians not use what was available even in late Tsarist period, like the semiotic school, the Tartu school, yeah, from Lotman and Uspensky. There were possibilities to find more modern approaches, to apply more modern approaches even during Soviet times. But why wasn't that done? My interpretation would be because we have a double ideologization of historiography. One is the overt Marxist one, the formation theory, and the other one, underlying, is a nationalist one. So we have a history that is double with a double ideologization. So then you can imagine really what's still to be done to deconstruct and to look what really was going on in past centuries. Or not really, but what might have been, or what we can deduct from that. You know? So, to my point of view, it's really worth to reread Pater Gugushvili's history, economic history of Georgia, and or to check really what is in there, what can be used today. Not only to stick yourself to political history and to say, so this Georgian state is centuries old and that's it. There was more going on. I heard that there was a Roin Metreveli wrote a book about marginalized groups, Glachebi or not Glachebi, but kind of social outlaws or something like that in the 60s. So I just learned about it yesterday, so I have to check really a small book. Nino Kioruradze told me about that, yeah, and really, so these things, and it needs to, they are worth to check what is still interesting, what can be used for modern historiography from what was produced in Soviet times. In Estonia, they set up a history commission to check really what can be used and what should be thrown away. But here, what happened here, really everything was devaluated because it was contaminated with Marxism. I hope this answers your question. I would also like to mention that there were anal approaches applied in Georgian historiography.
Yeah, whether you know any terms of this kind.
Because this, so I'm still looking and looking really what, because history, producing history also means to forget. So something, history means we highlight something that is worth to remember. And then it also might be worth to look what might have been forgotten. And then it's very difficult to recover this. But at least you can identify the wide areas. Yeah? There's a very good book by a person who is from Haiti, and he wrote about the revolution of the slaves on Haiti in 1801. An event that was unimaginable for French enlightened, civilized people. So they did not mention it anywhere. So this was something that's almost forgotten. Yeah, but it was the first revolution in a slave state, in an island, Haiti, 200 years ago. Yeah? It was very good. Silencing the Past is a book. Fascinating. A good book for historians really to read, because it signs how we do forget, or in the process when collective memory is turning into history, and it always means a decision. So throwing away the books of the library of the Institute of Marxism-Leninism, a unique collection, has a meaning. So you don't think that it's worth to be remembered. Yeah? And once it is away, and this so National Library came, took some books, others came, took some books, so the more rare ones, but Jean Jaurès, or something like famous Gramsci, or something like that, what was forbidden in Soviet times here, yeah? Independent Marxist thinkers. So therefore, also I hope for support in trying to save as much things for the future that is possible, also from the Soviet period. And Tim as well, I know.
I would like, in the first place, thanks, and I would like, I don't know, to continue your point of views. You know, in the course of your lecture, you will trying to refer on book to construct history, and you know, in the course of your lecture, I couldn't reward the association with the construction. Its main word in postmodernism. And to do an analogy with Jacques Derrida, the Chromatology, the main book, and his main idea that by means of writing, you can to rethink, you can to stop, because in the course of, if to compare with Georgian history, in the course of Georgian history, it was fiction of Georgian history, only fiction but not rethinking. And talking about historiography, it's attempting of rethinking of history. But talking about Javakhishvili, it's not only we can't talk about Javakhishvili, but in close we can't talk about period, because it was historiography in Georgia and others former Soviet countries. And you know, maybe it depends on period. Maybe we can't talk about so-called circle period as mentioned in Karl Jasper's history, when we talked about special time when was something happened. For example, you're talking about different history, and I can to give an example, Georgian philosophy, so Chavonutsubice, and in Russia, history of Russian philosophy, Vasily Zanyanchkovsky. I forgot his